The tea is still hot when your phone buzzes twice against your thigh. Not a call. Not a message. Two short pulses separated by exactly 1.4 seconds. A pattern, meaning the same thing it meant the first time you felt it 3 years ago inside a government office on Valiasser Street. Someone, somewhere in a building you are not authorized to enter, has begun asking questions about you. You set the tea down on the conference table. You smile at the deputy minister sitting across from you. You explain, calmly, that the bandwidth bottleneck affecting the Ministry of Energy's secondary relay nodes can be resolved in 72 hours if the procurement order clears before Thursday. He nods. He writes something. You watch his hand. You are thinking about the emergency protocol sewn into the lining of your watch. You are a Mossad operative. You have been inside the Islamic Republic of Iran for 9 years. And the cover has just been flagged. Nobody in this room knows that. Nobody has any reason to suspect the soft-spoken telecommunications engineer sitting across from the deputy minister is anything other than what his documents describe, a 35-year-old Iranian national, born in Isfahan, educated in Ankara, employed for 6 years by a private firm serving 6 government ministries. Your legend is not just clean, it is immaculate. It took 4 years and 11 people to build. 3 of those 11 you have never met, and never will. The flag could be routine. It could be targeted. You do not yet know which. You finish the meeting. You shake hands. You take the elevator to the lobby and step into a November afternoon. The counter-surveillance route takes 2 hours and 14 minutes. 3 metro changes. 1 bus. 1 40-minute walk through the Tadrish Bazaar, where you buy a kilogram of walnuts you do not need and exchange 30 words with a vendor you have visited every other Thursday for 7 years. He asks about your wife. You tell him she is well. He bags the walnuts. Any surveillance team watching sees a man buying walnuts. Nothing more. This is the thing they cannot train you for. The patience. The grinding, years-long architecture of ordinary life that has to be so convincing it convinces you. It started with the invitation. You were 27, sitting in a bar in Tel Aviv 6 weeks after completing your service in Unit 8200, the Signals Intelligence Division of the IDIF, whose name you are not permitted to say in public even now. A man sat down. Perhaps 55. He ordered water. He spoke for 11 minutes and never once said the word Mossad. He didn't need to. He said your father was born in Isfahan. He said you spoke Farsi at a native level with the specific southwestern dialect of that city. He said your face, your bone structure, your coloring, he paused, were qualifications. He described a program. Multi-year, total immersion, no diplomatic cover, no extraction window under 96 hours, no official record of your deployment. No one who could publicly acknowledge your existence if things went wrong. You said yes in under a minute. Your father had escaped Tehran in 1979 at 16, carrying 1 bag. He never talked about what he left. He talked about what wanted to destroy what he found. You understood what you were being asked to do before the man finished speaking. You file everything else under things that cannot be processed without compromising the mission. The training lasted 3 years and 4 months. The first year was construction. A fictional Isfahan childhood built sentence by sentence until you could describe the smell of bread from the bakery on your fictional block with the specificity that only exists in real memory. 6 hours a day walking through satellite imagery of your neighborhood until it lived in your body the way real places do. The second year was tradecraft. Dead drops. A camera in a pen storing 40 high-resolution images on a chip 2 millimeters wide. Counter-surveillance routes designed for cities you hadn't entered yet. Emergency burst transmissions lasting 0.08 seconds, undetectable by any monitoring array currently deployed in Tehran. You learn to read a room for threat vectors before you read it for exits. The third year was psychological. They put you in a room modeled on Ward 209 at Evin Prison. Sleep deprivation for 88 consecutive hours. A recording of your mother's voice, fabricated without her knowledge, telling you it was safe to come home. You held the legend for 11 days. When it ended, your supervisor told you the simulation reached 65% of real-world intensity. He said the remaining 35% could not be replicated because it required knowing the pain would never stop unless you surrendered a name. That knowledge, he explained, could only be understood when real. You chose not to examine what that meant. You were boarding a plane in 3 months. You entered Iran on a Tuesday in March. Commercial flight, Istanbul to Tehran. A genuine passport, not forged, genuine. Issued in a name that had existed in 3 separate government databases for 4 years before you boarded. You took the metro from Imam Khomeini Airport and watched the city through the window and felt nothing identifiable. That was the first cost you couldn't name. For 2 years, you collected nothing. You reported nothing. You existed. You attended Friday prayers because absence was logged and presence was not. Your handler contacted you once every 4 months through dead drops, requiring 3 hours of counter-surveillance routing. The messages were always one word. Continue. The patience is the weapon. Nobody in training says that with sufficient force. The patience is the entire weapon. Year 3. You changed jobs. A colleague recommended you for a position at a firm servicing government telecommunications infrastructure. The Mossad did not arrange it. They had placed you in an industry where it would happen organically if the cover held. It held. The access wasn't classified. But the metadata, who called whom, at what frequency, from which tower, was intelligence. You began transmitting via microdot embedded in postcards mailed to a philatelist in Vienna who forwarded them to a nephew who did not exist, at an address that was a Mossad processing facility. Year 5, you met Shirin at a dinner in Elahiya. She was an architect. 6 months later, headquarters assessed the relationship as operationally useful. They authorized it. What no authorization covers is that you would love her in a way that had nothing to do with the operation. Real love. The kind that lives in the body. She knows nothing. The man she married does not exist. The biography she memorized is fiction. Every morning you wake beside her, you commit an act of deception so total it has no name in any language. You file this in the compartment where you store everything that cannot be examined. The compartment is full. Year 7, your clearance was upgraded. You began consulting for a division adjacent to the IRGC. The intelligence shifted from metadata to operational. Procurement schedules for centrifuge components bound for Fordau. Travel patterns for personnel linked to the nuclear directorate. Network architecture connecting IRGC nodes to facilities the IAEA had been requesting access to for 6 years. You photographed documents with the pen camera. You transmitted in 0.08-second bursts at 2 a.m., while Shirin slept 12 feet away. Nobody at headquarters knows what that 12 feet feels like. Year 9, today. The flag, the T, 2 pulses. You sit on a bench in Lale Park at 11 a.m. and read a newspaper. After 40 minutes, a man sits beside you. He doesn't look at you. You don't look at him. He speaks Farsi with a Mossadi accent that is not his natural accent. He is your handler. He entered Iran 4 days ago through a route you are not permitted to know. He tells you the flag was generated by a Vaha database audit of all foreign-educated personnel with infrastructure access above a certain clearance threshold. Routine. Not targeted. Your legend held every verification query. The audit is already closed. Then he tells you something else. He tells you that intelligence you provided in Year 6, a procurement timeline memorized from a document visible on a desk for 110 seconds, while its owner poured tea, allowed planners to predict a weapons component transfer window that would otherwise have gone undetected. He says the decision made on that intelligence cannot be described in a public park. He says it mattered at a level where decisions about millions of lives are made. He says this without ceremony. Then he stands and walks north. You stay on the bench 10 minutes. You fold the newspaper. What you feel is not pride. What you feel is 9 years pressing against walls not designed to hold this much for this long. You think about your father's funeral, a Tuesday in Haifa, 2 years ago. You were in a Ministry of Communications meeting reviewing server protocols for a facility in Karaj. Your father was being buried in a country that does not know you exist, in a grave you have not stood beside. The grief had nowhere to go, so it went into the compartment, silently, without end. You go home. Shirin is cooking. You describe your day accurately. 2 meetings, a server issue, traffic on Shamron. She laughs about the traffic. You eat dinner in an ordinary apartment, and she rests her hand on yours across the table, and you let her love the person built in a facility outside Tel Aviv. Because there is no other option, and because somewhere past the architecture of the lie, something real is being touched, and you cannot afford to examine what that means. After she sleeps, you go to the bathroom. You activate the burst transmitter. 6 characters. Confirmation of continued cover integrity. Transmission time, 0.08 seconds. You look at yourself in the mirror for a moment that lasts longer than it should. Somewhere in the Glilit district north of Tel Aviv, a light is on. Someone is reading a report containing intelligence you risked everything to gather. That person does not know your name. They will never know your name. The decisions they make will shape the security of a country you have not stood in for 9 years. Tomorrow you will wake, take the metro, drink tea, check servers, and count the days until a single word arrives through a channel invisible to every monitoring system in Iran. You do not know which word you fear more. Continue means more years inside the compartment. Come home means telling Shirin the truth. Both destroy something that cannot be rebuilt. The mission does not care. In a bar in Tel Aviv right now, a man who looks about 55 is ordering water and sitting down across from someone who doesn't know yet that they're already qualified. The cycle does not end. It only changes faces. 9 years are inside your body like a second skeleton. The phone sits on the nightstand. Shirin breathes in the dark. The silence is total. The mission continues. That is what they told you. They just never said what continues actually costs.